Title: Undercover CEO found a new cashier crying in the break room. What she said next shattered his heart. The sound of muffled sobs pierced the silence of the break room like a cry in the dark. The CEO, dressed in plain khakis and a faded polo to blend in with his staff, had just finished stocking shelves as part of his undercover week-long evaluation. As he pushed open the heavy door to grab a quick drink, he wasn't expecting to stumble upon a moment that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Slouched on the bench, her back to him, was a young woman in a red company apron, her shoulders trembling, hands clenched into fists, and tears streaking her cheeks. In that fragile moment, time slowed. What could break someone this much at work? What pain was she carrying so quietly while trying to serve smiles at the front counter? Backhand index pointing right. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of hidden stories, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, subscribe to Rappel of Hope, and let us know in the comments what you would have done if you were in that break room too. Earlier that week, Mark Elridge, the founder and CEO of a national retail chain, had stepped into his Midwestern branch disguised as a regular trainee cashier. At 52, Mark had built an empire from scratch, but somewhere along the way, spreadsheets had replaced stories, and margins had buried meaning. He wanted to see what life was really like for his staff on the ground. No boardroom filters, no managers fawning. Just raw, human truth. That's when he met Ava. Ava was 23, fresh out of community college, quiet, but exceptionally polite. She wore tired shoes, had a nervous smile, and always offered to cover shifts. Other employees mentioned she'd only been there for 2 weeks, but she never said much, just did her job, nodded politely, and disappeared. Mark noticed how she often skipped her breaks, barely ate during lunch, and constantly checked her phone with a kind of desperation in her eyes. What Mark didn't see until that day in the break room was the truth behind her silence. He stood frozen for a moment, debating whether to leave and give her privacy or step in. But something in her weeping told him she'd been holding this in for too long. Gently, he cleared his throat. Ava jerked upright, quickly wiping her face, mortified to be seen like this. She muttered apologies, trying to get up, but Mark, still just Mike, the trainee to her, sat down and asked if she was okay. What followed was a confession that shattered every layer of emotional detachment Mark had built over the years. Ava was a single mother. Her son, Liam, was 5 and recently diagnosed with leukemia. She had no family to help. Her parents had passed in a car accident when she was 16, and she'd bounced around the foster system ever since. The father of her child had vanished the moment the pregnancy test turned positive. Now, every cent she earned went to medical bills, childcare, and bus fares. She'd taken the job out of desperation, but with Liam's condition worsening, she didn't know how much longer she could keep it all together. She wasn't crying because of the work. She was crying because she'd just gotten a call. Her babysitter had taken Liam to the ER after he collapsed at home. Ava had begged her manager to leave early but was denied because the shift was short-staffed. She was heartbroken, stranded, and terrified. Mark felt something in his chest he hadn't felt in years: helplessness. He remembered building his company after losing his wife to cancer. He remembered the sleepless nights, raising 2 kids alone, and clawing toward success with nothing but grit and love. He saw himself in Ava. But more importantly, he saw someone who hadn't been given a fair chance. Without revealing who he really was, Mark excused himself, saying he'd find help. Within 30 minutes, Ava was on her way to the hospital with a company driver. Mark stayed back, shaken and silent. That night, he sat in his hotel room and cried, for Ava, for Liam, for every story like hers he'd never known because he was too busy being the man at the top. The next morning, the store manager got an unexpected visit, from the actual CEO. In full authority now, Mark didn't reprimand or scold. He asked questions. He listened. Then, he began to make changes. Ava was offered a full-time position with benefits and double her pay. A fund was quietly set up to support Liam's medical expenses. Flexible hours and work-from-home options were introduced across stores for single parents. And a new company policy ensured that no employee would ever be denied emergency leave again. A week later, Ava returned, unsure of what awaited her. She nearly collapsed when she found a letter on her locker, signed by the CEO himself, thanking her for her strength, her honesty, and her courage. Alongside it was a card made by Liam, filled with messy crayon scribbles, but clearly showing a stick figure holding a sign that said, "Thank you for saving my mommy." Mark didn't make a show of it. He never spoke of it in the media. But everyone in that store knew, and slowly the story spread. One man had seen past the title, the uniform, and the hierarchy. He had seen a human being. And he acted. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a leader can do is simply listen. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Rappel of Hope. Your support helps us keep telling real stories that matter. Leave a comment below telling us, have you ever been helped when you least expected it? Or helped someone without them knowing? We'd love to hear your story.